And here we go on our Wednesday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Let's just start with the news of the day. Kind of unexpected. These things always are. David Njoku going on the reserve COVID-19 list. Although it was interesting, Stephen Carlson went on the list on Monday. He's on injured reserve, but he's around the facility. We've seen him kind of sitting outside eating lunch and that stuff. So he's around. So I guess not real surprising that another tight end went on the list, but it's David Njoku. And Mary Kay, we'll just start here. Production aside, Njoku is very important to this team because they don't have Harrison Bryant. They love to run 13 personnel. This kind of changes what they want to do on Sunday, I would think.
It really does. I think this is pretty big. I mean, David Njoku is a very, very big part of their game plan. And as you mentioned, Harrison Bryant is out with a high ankle sprain. And they were already trying to figure out how they were going to replace him. And could they still do enough of the 13 personnel that they quite often like to use? So now they're going to have to be scrambling to figure out how to run 12 personnel, right? So so this is going to be really interesting to see what they do. But David Njoku, as you mentioned, nobody's been wildly productive in terms of having like humongous breakout games. But David Njoku is third in receptions, tied for first on the team with 3 touchdown catches, and is number 1 in receiving yards with over 400 this season. And he is a big part of the game plan, especially in this game, when you know that these guys are challenged in their secondary with Marlon Humphrey being out. David is one of those guys that he can hit that big explosive play when he's on. So I definitely think this is a big deal.
Yeah, Ashley, I mean, sometimes I don't know if I call it trolling or whatever. I joke about David Njoku's production, but he is kind of the one guy on this team that has had some big games. He had a huge game against LA. He does have that capability to hit big plays. He's become a good blocker. And again, that 13 personnel, it's just sort of the identity of this football team.
Yeah, I mean, they run it just about more than any other team in the league, I think. So I guess it's another wrench thrown into this offense that obviously, given recent offensive production, they didn't need that, especially coming out after the bye week. And like Mary Kay said, without Harrison Bryant too, potentially, I mean, that's a unit that's taken a lot of hits in recent weeks. And we obviously know that the passing game hasn't been what anyone envisioned, what this team wants it to be. So without a guy who, like you said, Dan, has had some big games there, it definitely hurts.
Again, you just count on this guy so much. And Mary Kay, the whole narrative kind of leading into this game is the Browns were moving in the right direction health-wise. Obviously, they lost Jack Conklin for the year. That hurts a lot. And that's part of this, too, that we should probably talk about. But they were moving in the right direction health-wise. And unfortunately, this is just kind of a blow going the other way.
Yeah, when you think about it, they headed into the last game against the Ravens with Harrison Bryant, David Njoku, and Jack Conklin, 3 either key players or starters, including a 2-time All-Pro right tackle. Now, they probably won't have any of those guys for this game. We know Jack's out, Harrison's out, and David Njoku, it's going to be tough to get back. I think that I'm calling it a long shot. Now, TJ Watt last week, he went on the list on a Monday, and he was activated by Saturday. But when you go on the list on a Tuesday, it's tough to get those 2 negative tests in a row and be activated. Now, we're not going to rule it out. Maybe he'll get a Christmas miracle and he will be back on that field. But they have to plan for the inevitability that he might not be there. And therefore, like you said, they were trending towards being one of the healthiest teams in the NFL. And now they kind of have to hope that nobody else tests positive for COVID, because remember, I was thinking about this. They were coming off of their bye week. When you come off your bye week right now with so much going on in terms of the Omicron variant and whatnot, I was thinking about this. I was very curious to see how many guys would test positive. I think they have to brace themselves and hope nobody else does.
So what does this offense look like then? What is Kevin Stefanski and his coaching staff? This is one of the good things, at least it's Tuesday, so they're just sitting in the building getting ready for Baltimore anyway. And they don't have a lot to get ready for. They just played Baltimore. So what does this offense look like to you, Mary Kay? Are we going to finally see that offense? I know you've kind of been clamoring for, more wide receivers, a little more wide open. Are we just going to see Andy Janovich and Johnny Stanton a lot more? How is this going to change?
Well, you know what? There are a lot of different ways that they could go with this. I think one of the things that we're going to see more of, and we've talked a lot about this, is you'll see more Kareem Hunt. And I think that you can even use Kareem Hunt in some ways that you might use a tight end. You can use him to block and do some different things and to stay in and to help your challenged tackles, especially perhaps your challenged right tackle situation. So I think you'll see him come in very much handy for this game. And as you mentioned, you can use Andy Janovich in some ways creatively, and also Johnny Stanton. You can bring Johnny Stanton up and try to use him in those ways too. In terms of the wideouts, I mean, I guess it would make sense to possibly use three wides a little bit more here and there, but it doesn't feel like that at this time of year. I mean, it feels very much like a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt game. And I think that they're just going to try to plow ahead with that, even though the Ravens are very good at stopping the run. I think this time they're going to try to stick with the run and keep it viable. I don't know how they're going to overcome the loss of these tight ends, especially, again, like I said, when you have to give your tackles some help. But I think it's going to involve using some combination of your fullbacks and Kareem Hunt.